Your thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky of your mind. You need not chase them away nor cling to them, but simply watch them drift by while you remain the unchanging sky. And that is the thought for today. Welcome to 7 Good Minutes. I'm Clyde Lee Dennis. Thanks for joining me for what I believe will be 7 of the most enriching minutes of your day. In today's episode of 7 Good Minutes, we talk about 7 quick tips to stop negative thoughts in their tracks. Enjoy. You know that moment when a negative thought pops into your head and suddenly it's like a dark cloud has settled over your entire day? Maybe it starts with something small, a critical comment from a colleague, a mistake you made, or just waking up on the wrong side of the bed. Before you know it, that one negative thought has invited all its friends to the party, and your mind becomes a swirling storm of worry, self-doubt, and pessimism. If this sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. We all experience negative thinking, but the good news is that you don't have to be at the mercy of these thoughts. By the end of this episode, you'll have 7 practical, quick techniques you can use immediately to interrupt negative thought patterns and redirect your mind toward a more balanced, positive perspective. First, let's understand what's happening when negative thoughts take over. Your brain has what scientists call a negativity bias. It's naturally wired to pay more attention to potential threats and problems than to positive experiences. This served our ancestors well when survival depended on spotting danger, but in our modern world, this same mechanism can trap us in cycles of unnecessary worry and self-criticism. The first tip is the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding technique. When you notice negative thoughts spiraling, immediately engage your senses to bring yourself back to the present moment. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. This technique interrupts the negative thought loop by redirecting your attention to your immediate environment, rather than the stories your mind is creating. The second tip is to practice the thought labeling technique. Instead of getting caught up in the content of negative thoughts, simply observe them and label them. You might say to yourself, "I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough," or "I notice I'm worrying about tomorrow." This creates distance between you and your thoughts, reminding you that you are not your thoughts. You're the observer of your thoughts. The third tip involves challenging your negative thoughts with what I call the evidence test. When a negative thought arises, ask yourself, what evidence do I have that this thought is true? What evidence do I have that it might not be true? Often you'll discover that your negative thoughts are based more on fear and assumption than on actual facts. This doesn't mean dismissing legitimate concerns, but rather ensuring your thoughts are grounded in reality. The fourth tip is the best friend technique. Ask yourself, what would I say to my best friend if they were having this exact thought? We're often much kinder and more rational when advising others than when talking to ourselves. This technique helps you access your own wisdom and compassion, which are always available, but sometimes get overshadowed by self-criticism. The fifth tip is to use physical movement to shift your mental state. Negative thoughts often come with physical tension, tight shoulders, clenched jaw, shallow breathing. Take a few deep breaths, stretch your arms above your head, go for a quick walk, or do some jumping jacks. Physical movement changes your physiology, which can immediately impact your mental state and make it easier to think more clearly. The sixth tip involves the zoom-out perspective. When you're caught in negative thinking, you're usually zoomed in very close to the problem, making it seem bigger than it actually is. Ask yourself, how will this matter in a week? In a month? In a year? This doesn't minimize real challenges, but it helps you see them in proper proportion and prevents temporary setbacks from feeling like permanent disasters. The seventh tip is to practice thought replacement. Once you've interrupted a negative thought pattern, consciously choose a more balanced or positive thought to focus on instead. This isn't about forcing fake positivity, but about giving your mind something constructive to work with. You might replace, "I always mess things up" with, "I'm learning and growing from my mistakes," or "Nothing ever goes right" with, "Some things are challenging right now, and I'm capable of handling them. It's important to understand that the goal isn't to never have negative thoughts. That's neither realistic nor healthy. Negative emotions and thoughts serve important functions. They alert us to problems that need attention and motivate us to make necessary changes. The goal is to prevent negative thoughts from taking over and running your life. Practice these techniques when you're feeling relatively calm, not just during moments of intense negativity. Like any skill, they become more effective with practice. You might even write them down on a note card to keep with you as a quick reference. Remember that changing thought patterns takes time and patience. You've probably been thinking in certain ways for years, so be gentle with yourself as you develop new mental habits. Each time you successfully interrupt a negative thought spiral, you're strengthening your ability to do it again. Also, pay attention to your thought patterns throughout the day. Are there certain times when negative thinking is more likely to occur? Are you more vulnerable when you're tired, hungry, or stressed? Understanding your patterns helps you prepare and use these techniques proactively rather than just reactively. Consider keeping a thought journal for a week. Write down negative thoughts as they occur. Then practice applying these techniques and note what works best for you. Everyone's mind works differently, so you might find that some techniques resonate more than others. It's also worth noting that persistent negative thinking can sometimes be a sign of depression, anxiety, or other mental health concerns. If you find that negative thoughts are significantly impacting your daily life, relationships, or ability to function, don't hesitate to reach out to a mental health professional for additional support. Your thoughts have tremendous power over your emotions, your energy, and your actions. When you learn to work with your mind, rather than being controlled by it, you reclaim your power to create the kind of mental environment that supports your well-being and helps you thrive. These 7 techniques are tools in your mental toolkit. The more you practice them, the more natural they become, and the less power negative thoughts will have over your daily experience. You have more control over your mental state than you might realize. And these simple but effective strategies can help you exercise that control with confidence and skill. That does it for today's episode of 7 Good Minutes. Please take a moment to rate and review the show on the platform you're listening on. Until next time, let's be civil to one another out there. Thanks for listening.